And if you look at the Industrial Revolution in the UK, on a population base of 10 million people, it took them roughly 154 years to double the per capita incomes, from $1,300 per capita to about $2,600 per capita. The US, starting 120 years later, took 54 years, again on a population base of 10 million people, to double the per capita incomes. Germany took 65 years on a population base of 28 million. Japan took 33 years on a population base of 50 million approximately, to double the per capita incomes. China is doing it every 12 years. India is doing it every 16 years. Not on 20 million, 30 million, 50 million people. They're doing it on 2.5 billion people combined, 2.6 billion people combined in India. So the pace of that growth is happening at 10 times the speed, more than 200 times the scale of what we have ever witnessed in our lifetimes. That's a game-changing phenomenon that will drive calorie consumption. But also, we are also facing an urbanization revolution. The Chinese population is now 51% urban for the first time. 1% urbanization, 1.5% urbanization rates each year. 14 to 16 million people are urbanizing in China every year. India has reached an urbanization rate of 30%. Africa has reached an urbanization rate of 40%. Across Asia, whether it's Indonesia, Vietnam, Thailand, there is a revolution in urbanization. And what does that mean? Urban populations roughly consume 3.5 times more dairy products and egg products in the rural population per capita, 2.5 times more meat than the rural populations. And you can see, as the urbanization is happening in China, demand for calorie consumption changes quite dramatically, particularly the protein story, which we are all aware of, but even the fat story. And that is a third phenomenon. There's a revolution in dietary habits, from a cereal and carbohydrate-based diet to a protein and fat-based diet. China in the mid-80s consumed 15 kgs of meat per capita. Today it consumes 55 kgs of meat per capita. In Australia, you consume 120 to 130 kgs of meat per capita. In Europe and the US, it's about 120 kgs of meat per capita. In the past, we used to say, culturally, the Chinese and Indians will never eat as much meat as Western folks do. But Taiwan and Hong Kong, which are greater parts of China, today consume about 100 kgs of meat per capita. It's all about economics. If you can afford it, you want to eat more eggs and you want to eat more poultry meat or pork meat or beef meat. Today, China consumes all of 50% of all the pork that is produced in the world, 40% of all the eggs that is produced in the world, 18% of all the beef that is produced in the world, about 17% of all the poultry meat that is produced in the world. And it consumes a third of the rice that is grown in the world, a quarter of the soybeans that is grown in the world. And that is as a result of this growing per capita consumption as dietary habits shift to a protein and fats-based diet. Not just the protein story, it's also the fat story. It's about milk, it's about dairy products, it's about cheese, butter, where consumption in the transitioning economies is growing quite significantly. And as if all this was not enough, we've gone and shot ourselves in the feet by converting more food and feed raw materials into the fuel complex. So 10% of all the world oil seeds that were produced last year went into conversion into biodiesel. 40% of the US corn crop went into ethanol manufacturing. 55% of the Brazilian sugarcane crop went into ethanol manufacturing. This is a self-goal. I don't think from an energy input-output point of view it makes any sense, excepting probably for sugarcane, but none of the others it makes any sense to really convert and divert them into biofuel.